And we will go ahead and jump right in. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you guys for joining in. So, today we are going to be presenting the Silver Tsunami Success, and our intent is to give you 30 ideas, keep it under 30 minutes, and make sure these are ideas that are implementable in 30 days. So, this is going to be very, very fast acting for you guys. So, just want to make sure. Can you guys? I will share the screen. Can you share? Can you see the screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, well then with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so a lot of people say, well, what is the silver tsunami? Other than being a really, really cool phrase, some may have heard it as the gray wave, but really it's about that group of baby boomers that they're going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years, and they've owned all of these businesses. It's projecting about 3.5 million businesses are going to change hands over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be through a multitude of ways, either mergers, acquisitions, maybe they're just going to transfer ownership through their families, or unfortunately just closures, right? They didn't know what to do with it. But what we wanted to do is just present an idea that there's a lot of opportunities that exist for those that purchase these businesses, things that weren't looked at before as new owners come in, or if there's older owners that are thinking, hey, let me give it a shot. We want to present these ideas to just give you something to think about that can immediately impact the bottom line. So I want to introduce your host. You're very fortunate. You get three hosts today instead of just one, but you don't get to hear from either of or any of us for very long. So I'm Adam Baker. I am a strategic partner with Schooley Mitchell. I've spent about 2 decades working with organizations, helping them control and reduce their costs. My background's in operations and business analytics. And my focus is really on those monthly reoccurring costs that very rarely ever get addressed. And so they compound because they're not addressed. So that's my area of focus. Alex, the CEO of Subcity, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Subcity. We work with manufacturers across the country to help them claim and collect millions of dollars in economic incentives and tax credits across a whole variety of different programs. The only reason why I know how to spell the word tsunami is because my soccer team growing up was called the Tsunami. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning.
Thanks, Alex. And Matthew Reynolds from Dansig.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Reynolds with Dansig Incorporated. Our headquarters are located in Decatur, Illinois, which is about 3 hours south of Chicago. However, I sit in New York. I have 6 years of property and casualty and employee benefits insurance experience. We really focus on cost containment strategies and long-term partnerships. We want to work with you over our clients over a long time to work to reduce those costs, to create a really good proactive approach to what's likely one of your largest spends.
All right, so those are your hosts, and what we'll do is we will go ahead and kind of give you what the game plan is going to look like. So we're going to have 60 seconds per slide. They're going to go pretty quick. There's a little timer up at the top so you can see how much time is left on each slide. If you want to know more information about that topic, what we've done is we've gone ahead and put a red box around whoever is presenting that information so that you'll know and just kind of check and say, okay, slide number 13, that's going to be Matt. I really want to talk to him about that. We will have some time for Q&A after the presentation if you have something that just kind of stuck with you. And at the end, I will send out a summary of all these 30 items. That way you can have it for you to use or your clients to use. So Alex, Matt, did I miss anything?
I think so.
All right, let's buckle up and we are going to get moving. So go ahead,
to get started, I want to talk about alternative funding of employee benefits programs. Depending on your size, you may be fully insured, you may already be self-funded. It used to be that employers who had over 500 employees, that's when they began to explore self-funding. But really now, with some innovative solutions like captive structuring and some pricing methodology I'll touch on later. When you're in that 100 to 500 employee range, you can begin exploring self-funding options. This is a great way to take control of your program, turn it from what's really a liability into an asset. It's no longer just a cost that you're paying your premium. It's really an investment that you're putting into your company's benefits plan. If it performs well, you can get that money back. If it doesn't perform well, you've got stop loss on the back end to make sure that that insurance aspect is still there for your employee. So in the first 30 days, I would work with your consultant, your broker, to ensure that you are exploring all of your available funding options. Is my timer broken?
There's a glitch in the system. All right. The work opportunity tax credit is a federal tax credit for hiring employees that have faced barriers to employment in the past. Here are the target groups listed out below. So you can see if you're hiring folks in these categories, this is definitely a program you should look into. You should just have your payroll company implement WOTC, work opportunity tax credit, as part of the onboarding process. ADP, Paychex, Paylocity, most of these services that are popular with manufacturers offer this. If you have a high volume across lots of different states, you'll want to engage a specialist firm to help you. The top 5 states that we see taking advantage of this program: Texas, California, Florida, Illinois, Ohio. But again, it is a federal program for each hire that fits into one of these categories.
All right. So next up is waste. And I like to say there is money in stink. And what happens is every manufacturer has dumpsters. They have recycling. They have costs. They're trying to get rid of things. What they don't typically understand is how waste costs are generated. And so what you want to do, the way waste works is you are paying for a dumpster, whatever it is, and then however many times you're getting it picked up, that's your base cost. And then every fee that you get is a multiplier of that base cost. So the goal is, when you reduce the base cost of that dumpster, either through size, pickup, or negotiation, you're doing more than just reducing the cost of the dumpster. You're reducing the impact of the multipliers. So what we do is we always tell them, in the next 30 days, you should really go in and look to see what is being picked up in your dumpsters. Are they full? Because if they aren't full, then what you want to do is either move to a smaller size dumpster or reduce the number of pickups. Because again, you're not just reducing the base cost, you're reducing the impact of the multipliers.
All right, the R&D tax credit in 60 seconds. This is going to be tough, so I don't get zapped at the end. But if you have employees that are engaged in any research and experimentation and meet the 4-part test, you may be able to get a dollar-for-dollar offset in your corporate income tax liability for those wages or supplies for the portion of work that meet the 4-part test. The activities must have uncertainty, so a process of eliminating that. The activities must involve experimentation, so trial and error and different modeling. They must be technological in nature, so biological, physical, chemical, engineering all count. And they must be intended to improve the functionality of the process, performance, product itself. This was newly expanded as part of the Inflation Reduction Act up to $500,000 a year. This is usually the biggest bang for the buck for small and medium-sized manufacturers. Highly worth considering and looking into in the next 30 days for a 2023 study.
But one of the other areas that we'll find a lot of opportunities for savings is software, because typically what happens with software is it's purchased for operations, it's managed by IT, it's paid for by procurement, and human resources is the one who sees how many licenses you actually need, and none of those 4 groups talk to each other. And so what we typically do is say, when you do an audit, you want to look to see what is being used. And a great example one we did was a Microsoft audit for a manufacturer who had ordered Microsoft licenses for their floor supervisors. And the reason they did is because they had a shared computer, but they wanted them to check their emails. They wanted them to be able to get their emails. That was the only thing they were doing, is communicating via email. They purchased Microsoft licenses, and there's about roughly 15 different licenses you could purchase from Microsoft. The ones they purchased, though, had given them access to Access. It had given them the Power BI. There were a lot of things they didn't need when they could have moved it down to just a license that was just Outlook. And
The employee retention tax credit, this is the famous one. So if you're like me, you get multiple times a week spammers calling you. That's died down a little bit since the IRS formally paused the program until at least the end of the year. This is a refundable tax credit against certain employment taxes during the COVID pandemic. It really is a wonderful program if you meet the requirements, but it has been perverted by several ERC mills that have popped up. So there's two ways to qualify, either a reduction in revenue or impact for full or partial shutdown. We recommend to our clients only to pursue this tax credit if you have the very clear cut black and white reduction in revenues on a quarterly basis from 2019 to 2020 or 2021. A lot of the area that's risky is if you are using supply chain disruptions or full or partial shutdowns. So in the next 30 days, just double checking if you filed it already that you were filing for reduction in revenue versus something a little less black and white.
Reference-based pricing is an alternative healthcare pricing methodology. So traditionally, you have insurance carriers who partner with their network providers, and their providers have a set price that the networks discount for the employees that use the healthcare. In reference-based pricing, you as the employer contract directly with each provider to negotiate a preset rate for any given type of healthcare. This drastically reduces the cost in our experience for you as an employer, and even more importantly, if you see on that green line, the trend drops to 1.6% in our experience, rather than the fully insured or self-insured rate of 5.6 or 8.1%. You might run into balance billing, but that's what the map on the left is for. We have a 99% acceptance rate on average, so we rarely run into that. So in the next 30 days, I'd recommend exploring whether reference-based pricing could work for you.
Many states exempt raw materials and qualifying equipment purchases from sales and use tax if it's used in the manufacturing or research and development process. This should really be baked into your procurement process. It's usually just a simple form, 1 or 2 pages, that can save a lot of headaches down the line. So if you've taken the exemptions without the certificates, this can be a liability and pose audit risk. So when you sell the business, you'll likely have to increase the amount of escrow for the purchaser because of this risk. So in the next 30 days, I'd recommend just taking a look at your procurement process, making sure the equipment and machinery you're buying, you're taking advantage of the exemptions if they exist in your state. And then if you are, making sure you have the certificates in a filing cabinet or in a folder somewhere where you can produce them when you eventually want to sell your business.
All right. So 60 seconds is not enough time. Whoever thought of this was absolutely nutty, because that's not enough time. So procurement strategy. So what we find is a lot of times on the finance side, they build a strategy for procurement. On the operations side, they could care less about what the strategy is. They just need things when they need them. And so you really need to build that procurement strategy that balances your speed with economies of scale. And so what typically will happen is when we go in and work with, we'll find that they've got receipts from Amazon and from this vendor and that vendor. And what happens is you may have built a strategy that gives you volume discounts, but your employees aren't aware of it. So they need something, they need it immediately. And so they will go and order just from Amazon, try to get that quick shipment. So in the next 30 days, I recommend 2 things. First thing is to grab your reconciliations for your P cards, see how many Amazon purchases there are. Sometimes you're getting the best deal there, sometimes you're not. The next thing is go to your vendor of choice, whoever that is, to negotiate a speed delivery system.
We don't blame you if you haven't been able to read and absorb the 800,000 words and amendments in all of the recent legislation over the last few years. We can't, of course, cover all of these laws in 60 seconds, but I would just say if you are any company working on advanced manufacturing or investing in research, development, and innovation, you should be paying close attention. Any business involved in anything related to clean energy, reducing carbon output or greenhouse gases, renewables, electric vehicles, batteries, components, clean power generation, or improving energy efficiency. There's a lot packed in the IRA in particular for those sorts of companies. Any business with a direct involvement in semiconductors, semiconductor-related research, or any part of that supply chain should pay close attention to the CHIPS Act, of course. And any businesses operating in a distressed geographic area and paying above average median income, there's several place-based incentives in these bills as well.
So pharmacy is the single most controllable aspect of your employee benefits spend. And the first way to begin controlling that spend is to look at how your pharmacy benefit manager is getting paid. So traditional pharmacy benefit managers that work with your bigger well-known carriers like Blue Cross or United, they're typically owned by those carriers, and they'll institute things like spread pricing or rebating, and they'll keep a portion of those profits on the rebates and all of the spread pricing. So we work with transparent pharmacy benefit managers, and in the next 30 days, this is what I would look at too, is if you're not happy with your drug spend, looking at a transparent pharmacy benefit manager, because they get rid of all of those excess pricing methodologies. They only charge a per script fee, and they're going to source drugs in the most cost-effective way while still ensuring that the efficacy rate of those drugs is meeting your employees' standards. And we see massive savings with this.
All right. For mobile communications, the way I equate mobile communications is this. It's like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and then ordering a side salad and leaving. And because what typically happens is this. The company will order plans, and they will order unlimited plans for their employees just because it's the easiest thing to do, but never really analyzing how much are those phones being used. And so what we will find is there are opportunities to typically bundle multiple phones into a lower cost plan. So to give you some idea, so we work with a manufacturer, and if it's a large enough manufacturer, about $800,000 in savings from just looking at their phones and kind of figuring out what makes the most sense. So in the next 30 days, what I highly recommend is start pulling those invoices for your mobile communications, looking at how much is being used in data, text, and voice, seeing what your peaks are, and then start bundling those phones into lower cost plans.
On the property and casualty side of things, we are currently in one of the hardest property markets I've definitely ever seen in my career, but I think that the industry has ever seen. And in a hard market, you've got high rates and you've got low capacity. So insurance is more expensive and you're getting less of it. Your client underwriter relationship is reversed. So underwriters are no longer competing for your business as a manufacturer. It's up to you to compete for underwriters' business. And how you do this is to create a really good submission, create yourself as paint yourself as a best-in-class manufacturer against your peers. So this includes looking at quantitative risk analyses, your benchmark reports. You guys are probably going to be heavy on safety programs, procedures, your return to work programs, your modified duty programs, and any sort of safety communications. If you can bundle this and present that as a best-in-class program, that can make the difference between a good renewal and a bad renewal.
The federal government spends at least $10 billion a year on place-based job policies, and we estimate states spend another $50 billion on place-based programs like the New Market Tax Credit, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, USDA loans, Opportunity Zones, all trying to regrow local economies and improve the quality of life in various neighborhoods. There are mapping tools available for each of these programs, so it's worth a quick exercise in the next 30 days to place your facility's address into any of these tools for looking up. The programs are usually towns, corridors, blocks, census tracts, communities. A new feature of the Inflation Reduction Act is the concept of energy communities. So if you are in a census tract with a coal mine closure or adjacent to a census tract with a coal mine closure, there's all sorts of additional incentives and bonuses. But you can basically search for place-based incentives and then place your address in the mapping tools.
So auxiliary phone expenses. We know about the phones that are on the desk, the phones that are in our pocket, but these are the phone lines that you don't traditionally think of. So I've got a picture here of an elevator. So these are going to be your elevators, your security systems, your fire alarm systems, your fax machines. Those are often overlooked because they don't come as part of everything else. And there's a lot of opportunity for there. I give you two examples about elevators. Yesterday, I was working for a manufacturer and they have multiple elevators. And for the maintenance of their elevator, the maintainer of the elevator paid the phone line, and the phone line was $90 a month. A standard rate for an elevator line is about $15 a month on a cellular. So there's opportunity there. The worst we ever saw was an elevator that was getting charged $900 a month because the phone line just kept going up and up and up, and nobody addressed it. So you want to look in the next 30 days, say, what phone lines do we have in here? What are they doing? And can we move them to cell phone because it's cheaper?
Cost segregation allows commercial property owners to increase current cash flow through accelerated depreciation on certain parts of the property. So your building is usually on, if you own it, a 39-year depreciation schedule. That's the standard for commercial real estate. And a cost segregation study can basically isolate the parts of the building that depreciate much faster than that, usually about 20 to 35% of the total value of the building. They can be performed on buildings that were just purchased or constructed, as well as those that were purchased or constructed years in the past. These are systems, the various systems, as you can see in the diagram. In order for a cost seg study to make sense, a taxpayer should spend more than $1 million on the real estate asset itself. They should be profitable and owe income tax. That's where this can really help, and expect to hold the asset for at least another 3 years from the time of the study. So just a quick conversation with your accountant about if your building's been fully depreciated, if you own it, or if it makes sense to do a study like this.
Hey, you're stepping on my time, Alex. So utilities. One area that manufacturers are really sensitive to, and they do a really good job, is looking at their utility contracts. But there are still two opportunities that they tend not to look at, and that is shopping rates while still in the contract, and then also looking at what rate they're placed. And the rate is pretty important. I'll give you an example. So I had a conversation with Coca-Cola last week, and they said we did in our plants, we did a lot of efficiencies. We moved LEDs in, we dropped our consumption, but our bill did not change that much. And so what we did, I said, look at what tier rate you are on, because what happens is the more you use, the more your distribution company is going to charge you per kilowatt hour. As you drop that down, you should drop to a lower rate, but your utility company is not looking for that. You have to show that, call them, and do that.
Each utility company should have a list of commercial incentives. So an easy exercise to do today would just be putting in your utility provider and then business incentives after that into the search box. These range from discounts on energy efficient products to complimentary energy assessments if you're under a certain kilowatt threshold, to at the very top end, 5-year economic development rate discounts of 12, 18, or 25% off your monthly power bill. We've been able to negotiate these for clients with SoCal Edison in California and other utility companies across the country. If you can prove a case saying, hey, power is a big source of line item in my business, and we're considering other locations or hardships that's causing, you can make the case to your utility company for an EDR rate, is what those are called. And then sticking with the theme of energy, taxpayers that invest in ground up construction or improvements to their existing buildings are potentially eligible for 179D deductions. This could be for you as a building owner, or even if you're leasing the property. Eligible improvements must reduce energy use by making investments in any of the following categories: a building's envelope, like the walls and windows, roofs, doors; HVAC system, so energy improvement and energy efficiency on the HVAC system; or interior lighting systems, like replacing all of the older lights with LEDs. There are different ways to pursue a deduction, and all require comparison to building standards and a certification by a third party. This can be up to $5 per square foot if you are paying prevailing wage, which is very geographic dependent, but basically, are you paying the electrician's market rate in your area?
I love CFOs, but one area CFOs should not be able to make any decisions in is compressed gas. Because typically what happens is when they're up against the budget, they will float delivery and say, hey, can we push that delivery back till next month? Do we have enough to last us? What you actually want to do is just the opposite. You want to give the delivery schedule to your compressed gas supplier. And what you want to do is you want to call them and ask them if they have route optimization options. And what that means is if they're coming out your way, if they will stop and make a delivery for you. Because a lot of your cost, other than just paying for the gas, is the delivery fee itself because it's costing them. So if they're making specific visits just for you, you're going to pay a lot more. When you call and say, do you have route optimization options? What that allows them to do is stop in when they're out in that area already, reducing that transportation cost. The other thing you want to do is ask them if they can do palletized deliveries, where they'll deliver everything on a pallet if you have individual containers.
If you are hiring 5 or more good paying jobs, it's probably worth contacting your local economic development organization. These exist at all levels of our wonderful federated system, at the county level, at the city level, at the state level. There's usually job creation programs that you should be taking advantage of. At the very least, doing a simple online search for local and state incentives is a good practice, so you understand what sort of triggers will unlock those incentive programs. And getting on the radar of these businesses is great too. There's newsletters where you can sign up for news and events, meet other business owners in your area, and generally just keep an eye out for these folks in your local community because they exist and they want to help.
All right. So for small package shipping, the thing about this way, Amazon didn't get into the small package delivery service because it was lucrative. They got into it because it's very, very expensive. And so the things that you want to consider when as a manufacturer for small package shipping is avoiding those, we call them hidden fees, but if you look, you'll see them. What typically happens when you go to ship is you'll create all your team will create all their shipping labels. They'll have a cost. They'll go and slap the labels on and they'll send it off. What they traditionally don't see is what they actually got charged for shipping that package. And what will happen is if the address is wrong, maybe it was avenue versus street, they're going to get charged for that. If the box dimensions that were inputted don't match with what FedEx and UPS had to handle, they're going to get charged for that. So they never see, if they're making costly errors, they never see it. So what I would recommend is going back and reviewing your monthly invoices from the shipping to find those fees. When it comes to LTL is a little more complicated. There's about 15 factors that impact what you're paying for your less than load shipping. But there's really only a few of them that you can actually impact. And one of them is going to be your absolute minimum charges. These are, if you can negotiate down your absolute minimum charges, this is what your freight carrier is telling you you will pay at the bare minimum, no matter what you send. When you negotiate that down, it gives you flexibility for your clients. When they need something and they need it immediately, you're not stuck either paying or passing that cost on to them. You've negotiated down that minimum cost. The second is the commodity code. You want to try to negotiate. It's called freight of all kinds, and what that does is it averages out what the commodities are because that commodity code impacts what they're going to charge you. When you do a freight of all.
All right, we're getting there. Almost 7 more programs and slides left and things to do in the next 30 days. This one's moving more into the advanced category. This is our identifying opportunities to offer exemptions or incentives to your clients. So if you are the manufacturer, like we were talking about with sales and use tax exemption for your own business for buying equipment and materials, if you are selling into other manufacturers and they're using that equipment or material in a qualifying manner, you could save them 2 to 4% off the purchase price by being able to waive the state sales and use tax and help your sales velocity by stapling that to their invoice. Another example would be if you're offering training or upskilling services or anything related to clean energy or installing electrical vehicle charging stations for consumers or businesses, make sure you know about the programs and educate your buyers on the relevant programs they can pursue if they choose, because often they don't know about them either.
The experience modification factor is a rating component of your workers' compensation policy, and every industry has an EMOD of 1.0. However, in any specific industry, there is a minimum lower than 1.0 EMOD. And when you have a lower than 1.0 EMOD, your rate's going to be decreased. You're going to be paying less premium. If you have a higher than 1.0 EMOD, your rate is going to be increased. You're going to be paying more premium. This is a very controllable aspect of your workers' compensation program. If you're looking at your safety protocols, procedures, any sort of compliance documents, your return to work programs, your modified duty programs, if you have these in place and being enforced, and you can show this to your work comp carrier, they're going to discount your experience modification factor. In the next 30 days, I recommend getting with your broker or consultant, figuring out what your industry low EMOD is, figuring out what your EMOD is, and figuring out how to get your EMOD to the industry low EMOD.
All right. So credit card processing, you see this more and more now with manufacturers accepting credit cards when they do B2B, because the other company's trying to, float their cash for a little bit. But what typically happens when I ask them about credit card processing, they'll tell me what their effective rate is. They'll look down at the bottom and they'll say, my effective rate is blank. An effective rate is a really, really bad way of measuring your credit card processing rates. The reason that is because generally speaking, there's three factors that impact your credit card processing rate. It's the credit card company, it's the bank, and it's your credit card processor. The credit card company and the bank, you can't negotiate their fees. It is what it is. It's a standard. The credit card processor, you can. When you look at just the effective rate, you can't tell what the processor is charging you. And so you don't know if you have a good deal or not. So in the next 30 days, you want to find out exactly what is your credit card processing rate.
Before you can implement cost accounting, you need the basic financial hygiene in place. Obviously, as a new business owner or taking over an existing business, you want to have your books and records as clean as possible. The things that we think about from a baseline foundation standpoint: do you have a 13-week rolling cash flow forecast? Do you have strong controls in place for your spending? Do you have dashboards with visibility on key financial information? And are you effectively closing the books every month and classifying transactions properly? There are many service providers and experts out there, bookkeeper fixers, if you have historicals that you need to go back and clean up. There are fractional CFOs for more strategic financial advice, and loads of other offerings for your specific situation. Once you have the basics in place, you can move to a more advanced view of your business and really understand the profitability at the SKU level, project level, client level, and really start informing future quotes and estimations and bids based on historical data. Depending on the state, there are typically millions of allocated dollars to reimburse training and upskilling manufacturing employee. Some of these programs partner with technical colleges to offer courses in welding, milling, and other technical programs. Usually you'll need to pay your employee for the training and then get reimbursed from the state organization around this. The best candidates for programs around employee training dollars are businesses that offer a path to higher skills and wages. So taking someone with a basic degree, or maybe not even finishing college or associates, and being able to train them and upskill them into higher wage jobs. Obviously, that's good for the tax base, good for the individual, and good for the community. If you use a Big Four accounting firm, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, EY, these firms have state and local teams and credit and incentive practices. Even the next tier of accounting, auditing, tax advisory firms have a credit and incentive practice, but the vast majority of small and medium-sized manufacturers that we work with do not use one of these larger firms, and even regional firms don't typically offer their services, even though the manufacturers often think that they are being provided all of this through their CPA, who files their annual taxes. So we recommend in the next 30 days reaching out to your CPA to see if they are on top of these programs. If not, I know we've covered a lot today, but just things to keep in mind. The main triggers for these programs are hiring human beings, purchasing equipment, investing in real estate or tangible assets, and the threat to downsize or leave or move to other states can also be triggering impact. Lastly, kind of cheating here with 60 seconds and 5 different programs, but I just want you to be aware, and all small and medium-sized manufacturers and business owners to be aware, there's a lot of programs around setting up various things that are beneficial for you and your employees. So if you're starting a health plan, if you're building or offering childcare to your employees, FMLA, wheelchair or other accessibility improvements, or setting up a 401k or some kind of pension for your company, there are several programs at the federal level designed to offset some of this cost. So it's very specific, of course, to your situation and what you plan to do. But again, just be thinking, hey, in 2024, are we investing in any of these sorts of areas that improve things for our employees? If so, let's make sure we're taking advantage of these programs that were designed to help ease the burden on doing the right thing by your workforce.
All right. So that was 30 ideas, 30 minutes. The whole intent of this was not to make anybody experts. It was really to go a mile wide and an inch deep, because not every single one of those applies to every business. But there are opportunities that when you go through your business and you're operating, you think, oh, I remember hearing something about that. Let me go back to that nifty sheet that they sent me, because remember, we're going to send you that, and see what this is. Everything that we went over today, the manufacturers can do on their own, right? Obviously, we're here if they want to reach out. We're here to answer any questions, guide them if they want us to help them. We'd love to. But everything that is provided, they can ultimately do on their own. And that was the whole goal. Is at the end of the day, we want to make sure. We had a great conversation yesterday about how important manufacturing is to our economy, to our communities. And we want them to be strong. And so these are opportunities for them to ultimately maximize their bottom line immediately. With that, I will go ahead and open it up for any questions that anyone might have.
We want to stop the recording now or keep it going?
We can go ahead and keep it going.
Okay.
It was a good presentation. It was definitely a lot of information for sure. I honestly couldn't, I cannot remember everything. So I'm glad it's recorded.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what the documents for, is just to really help them come back, because I know Diane, like for instance, Diane, I could see you. I know some things triggered with you and some things didn't. And that was the point, is to give it a broad perspective.
Yeah, we'll share the list of all 30 ideas to implement with brief summary. So if your notes, if you weren't able to capture all of the ideas in their entirety, we don't blame you. And that's what the follow-up's for.
And next year it's 90 seconds. 60 seconds is not enough.
I loved where you kept getting cut off with the timer.
I didn't.
That was enjoyable too. That was funny. I like that.
It felt like a session of speed dating.
Yeah, we were going to have buzzers that would shock each of us if you went over the 60 seconds, but we decided against that.
And I do appreciate your mentioning the economic development agencies that are available. So I do look forward to what you're going to send out, because that will help me with my clients. And I think I'm going to follow up with you, Adam, and see if we could circle back around somehow and do a collaborative effort here.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Because you triggered some things that haven't been on my radar that once we get reauthorized might be beneficial for a collaborative effort for my client firms. So definitely. Thank you much for all of you.
My pleasure. So thank you, guys. The goal was to be done by 10:45, and we are there. Again, we'll follow up. We'll have everyone's email addresses. So thank you guys very, very much, and enjoy the rest of Manufacturing Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.